Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Gray Matter, which, based on some of the comments that we've been seeing on YouTube and on Twitter, seems to be a pretty popular film with our viewers. And absolutely, what an incredible movie that was. It was directed and edited by Red Clark. We are hoping that Red will be joining us in just a few moments' time. I know that he's watching because I see his comments in the YouTube feed. So Red, we know you're there. And if you haven't had a chance to, please do feel free to try and log back on as soon as you can. But in the meantime, for those of you who don't know, Red Clark started making movies when he was 10 years old, which you can probably tell because he's really good at it, casting classmates and teachers in various science fiction and horror films. Red is a writer, director, and editor. Projects he has directed range from commercial work to features to short films, such as a practical effects-heavy adaptation of Stephen King's Gray Matter, which we all just watched. He was also recently spotted, a couple of years ago, in the morgue as an autopsy body on the NBC show Chicago Med. So, obviously, Red Clark has knocked it out of the park with this adaptation of Gray Matter. Again, one of those Stephen King short stories that would be very difficult to film, and I can only imagine Red had some very interesting time, especially when you consider that the effects, as many of you... Is he there?
I'm here,
You're
says.
You're here. He's going to try to hop back on. Thanks, Red. We really appreciate that. By the way, your director of photography is also amazing. What an incredible feat that all of you, the whole team, put together. Actually, while we're waiting for Red, this is probably a good time to mention that we are sponsored this evening by Nude Vodka Sodas.
Thanks, Nude.
This is a really lovely gift that the folks over at Nude provided for us. And I can tell you, hey, there's Red. Excellent.
Yay!
Good. Well, just before we get to you, Red, I'm just going to say probably a good thing to drink after watching something like Gray Matter, because look at how crystal clear this beverage is. You'd be able to tell if there was anything gross in there that was going to turn you into a person-eating monster. That being said, thank you to the people at Nude, and thank you, Red Clark, for joining us here. We're so happy to have you.
Thanks, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Absolutely.
All right, cool.
So before we dive into it, I have some questions for you, and I know that there's some people online that have some questions. Can you just kind of give us a little bit more of a rundown of who you are, more than what I just said there? Like, how did you get involved in filmmaking, and what brought you to ultimately direct Gray Matter?
I started making movies when I was a little kid, and I always loved Stephen King, like most of the people here. When I was a kid, I had there was a book of Night Shift in my basement, and so I remember picking it up when I was a little kid and reading the short stories in there and getting freaked out by them. So that was kind of like my first introduction to King, and actually the first time I read Gray Matter. So
it is. It's one of those delightfully creepy stories that just has that sense of claustrophobia about it as much as anything else. You did all of the effects, as far as I know, practically, or at least most of them. What was the impetus to do that, and kind of how did you tackle that?
So we had I had a group of people working on the film. It was kind of a really, if you look at the Evil Dead production, this was kind of a similar probably production to it. We were kind of just running right into it, but I wanted to do this all practical effects, have everything be hands-on, just because I love that stuff, and we even threw in, if you notice, some stop motion at the end there, even though I know it looked hokey. I was just I just want to put some stop motion in this, So we had some super talented people involved in the effects. This guy, Kevin Ward, that I got in touch with, who was doing animatronic stuff, so I had him build the animatronic for the spider and help me build some of the mechanics for the Richie head. And Dina Cimaresti, I'm going to mispronounce her last name, but she came on board, and both of them ended up going on to Face Off after the production, but she won Face Off. So she did some the Richie head stuff, and had Rebecca Lieto helping a bunch with loose ends here and there all over the place, tentacles, blood, gore, bodies, things like that. And our buddy Kyle, who ended up doing that tentacle arm thing, which we threw that together really quickly. If that whole thing that attacks there, because Mike Bove, who's in the chat, who's the DP, when we were filming that, we're just dragging the guy around on the ground, and I'm just like, I'll get something cool here, don't worry, But a lot of the movie is like a throwback to just different King stuff that I loved, and there's some Dollar Baby throwback stuff in there. There's like a shot that's supposed to be like, which I have the VHS right over here, of like from like the Boogeyman one. There was like this like drifting shot, and I have all this, just lots of throwback stuff that, really it's just a love letter to Stephen King stuff and practical effects. So, it just it was really cool to make. It was a passion project, And I really enjoyed watching it and seeing everybody comment in there and stuff. And, I was like even hoping for a little bit MST3K, like poking fun at some stuff, but everybody was really nice. And it was touching to see all of the nice things people said,
You've also grossed out a lot of people.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't even think of it as that gross or scary of a movie. It was more, we were just making like an old fashioned monster movie. And, Larry Fessenden, someone mentioned, I saw, they were like, Larry, your tooth was pre-popped out because Larry's missing one of his front teeth. And he's like, dude, should we pop out my tooth? And I was like, yeah, let's do it, Because I was just, obviously it's a little fly type scene there so Rebecca actually, made the tooth, like a tooth that we could have like be bloodied and drop into the sink, because Larry's, has like a whatever metal on it or whatever. But Larry was amazing. Totally go with the flow on this. That guy's like people are saying, I recognize this guy. He's a legendary actor and director of horror stuff. It's just lots of great stuff. He's just in a movie that's out right now with Barbara Crampton called, I think Jacob's Wife is the name of it. But anyway, lots of awesome people that just came on board to help on this. And so I lucked out,
Well, and you had a very good vision, though, too, because I think, your decision to go all practical and to do those kind of throwback practical effects to movies that we're all really familiar with was an excellent choice, because I think it is scary, but it's also enjoyable, because, and somebody in the YouTube comments referred to it, I think, as squishy. Like the whole thing is just so, visually, and the sound design and everything, it just gives you that kind of visceral kind of grotesqueness to it. And that's one of the reasons why it works so very well. Like if it had been digital effects, I don't think that we would have had that sense of thrilling kind of horror that we do with what you've done.
Yeah, and then even if it's not scary, it's still fun to see that stuff and just things that you can put your hands on. And Mike Bove and I think Kay, came in as a producer on this project, are both also in the chat, and they both kind of carried this in different ways. Like Mike, it's funny because there's shots in this at certain points, like I said, it was an Evil Dead production kind of thing, where the stuff that Mike came in and filmed is like the really cinematic, amazing stuff. And then at a certain point, I'm like literally just filming myself and dropping, like for close-ups, I'm just dropping slime and blood on myself, or like I when I was having that cat come out of the cocoon, I was by myself, so I had the flashlight under my arm. I was pumping the fog with my foot, and I had the cat puppet, and then I was like hitting the record with my tooth, and I was like, I deserve this, and this shot is not going to look as good, but it's just like Mike Bove is actually a legit, cinematography. I believe his film won Best Cinematography at South by Southwest. His other movie, he's working on another movie right now, so lucky to have him come in on this. And so anyway, it's funny because it's like, some people, hopefully they don't notice this dramatically, but there's parts that Mike filmed that really look like a real movie, and there's parts that I had to film, or I've got other people press and record for me. And like I said, I think me and my other friend play like every part in this at some point for stand-in stuff. So we were shemping all over the place,
Fantastic. Well, and also too, if I'm not mistaken, not only were the effects hand done, but the poster for this film was hand painted.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the poster's almost better than the movie. It's just like
it's amazing. We got so much feedback on it. People love it. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's what the first thing that we did was the poster, because I was like, I have a hand painted poster, and Thomas Hodge, the dude designs, is his name he goes by. He had done Larry Fessenden some stuff for like Ty West's things that Larry Fessenden was producing, like The Innkeepers, and not sure if he did House of the Devil, but anyway, he has done a lot of John Carpenter Blu-rays and a lot of, like, he just did. The favorite thing I just saw of his is a movie most of you might not know, but it's The Split Second with Rutger Hauer. He's done a lot of the Shout Factory release stuff. So anyway, yeah, he did like a hand painted poster, and I was like, I wanted to, be like the posters that, like, you see, I have a bunch of VHS tapes here, like the kind of posters that you go to the video store and you be like, I want to see this. And even when the movie's not as great, you're just, because of the poster, you imagine it's great, So it's just like, that was the thought behind that. Just all posters should be like that, really. I'm surprised they don't do hand painted posters for everything. These artists are amazing. So I was lucky again to have someone come in at a reasonable price, and that was Thomas Hodge to do designs.
That's fantastic. Leah, do we have any questions from the Twitterverse?
Well, first of all, I just want to say, Red, thank you for sending me a bunch of those photos of the practical effects, because I did tweet them up there, and I didn't want to put it up too early, so people were like, what the fuck is that? So it's out there now. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for like all the nuggets that you've supplied us, like even in just chatting an email. It's been fantastic. I don't know how long you've been watching the festival for, but our friends at Dairy Public Radio have been writing haikus about each single film. So I want to read the haiku that they wrote for Grey Matter. Cheers to spoiled beers. A father's bad medicine changes his son's life. We give Grey Matter 5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts, and that's from our friends at Dairy Public Radio. And honestly, like, awesome. It's endless love that is coming through our feed right now for your film. Yeah,
that's really nice.
And if I can just,
go ahead.
No, I would just, this is sort of off topic, but I noticed somebody in the feed was wondering where our KingCast shoutouts were. We actually did do a KingCast shoutout a little bit earlier in the program, and we will be talking about
KingCast.
some of their...
You guys are awesome.
Yeah, we just talk about Dairy Public Radio a lot because of the haikus that they're doing.
They're tweeting in real time. So if KingCast wants to, I don't know, do some dramatic drawings of stick men and put them up, we'll share it.
For sure.
There was a
sorry, I had interrupted you. Sorry, I did it again.
I didn't know if you know. Speaking of the radio stuff, there's a WZON shout out in there for the radio, which I'm sure a lot of people use some WZON stuff. But one thing that's cool about this, and I don't know if he's still watching, but Jim Terry, my good friend, he does like comic art. He works for DC, and he did the comic book art that you saw in the store in the beginning, and so he ended up going on to do the Grey Matter Creep Show episode, the wraparound art. I don't think that they even knew that he'd worked on mine. I don't think they ever saw mine or anything, but it's funny. So it's like there, and then there was another guy who's the baby at the ending, right? Yep. I was originally going to use his baby. It was another friend of mine, Lon Strickland. And we just didn't end up, like having his baby be the baby. But he did the Survivor type episode for Creepshow. He was on the editorial department and heading the animation stuff. So it's interesting that there's a few people that did kind of dollar babies into the Creepshow thing that actually either helped or were going to help on this. So it's kind of fun. But Jim Terry, though, check out his stuff. He's awesome.
We certainly will. And maybe I shouldn't say this, but most of the people watching along on YouTube have liked your version of Grey Matter better than the version that they saw. I was just going to say it's coming out on Twitter too. So I hope that's
that's really really nice. I think it's like come on, they've got Adrian Barbeau in there, so
yes.
You can't compete with that. But no, I love seeing theirs, and there's other people who've done other versions of this too, and it's really fun to see all the other adaptations. And I think that what this all just comes down to is it's just that Stephen King has just been so generous. I mean, he was tweeting out about this festival, promoting it. Yeah. And, Bev Vincent and other people it's just such a supportive, awesome group. And Stephen King's just been so generous in helping people. And, the stories of the Dollar Baby stuff go way back with a lot of people, and I'm not going to go into it myself. But I think that hopefully he gets a kick out of, if he, even sees all these. I know it's just like he doesn't have the time to watch all of our movies, but if he did end up watching today, I hope that he knows that these are like love letters to his stories. And I think that we all recognize that he's just a generous, good person. And when people they're like, people talk about, who do you think is like, a great, good role model? I'm always like, Stephen King. And people are like, what are you talking, because they just read the books. But I mean, really, the guy's a really, really good person and really generous. So I'd just like to say, even though he'll probably never see it, thanks Uncle Steve for being so cool.
Absolutely.
And,
yeah.
I thought of something else that I actually did a trailer for a book of his a long time ago, and I should show I got he sent me a signed dedicated book.
Ooh.
Sweet.
It was so I thought you might like that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Anyway. Yeah, so it's one of my cherished. I love that thing, and his publisher used the trailer to promote. Used my trailer to promote the book, so that was really cool. So I just always been a fan, and just always was inspired by Stephen King stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, I can totally relate. And I mean, obviously, those of us who have made Dollar Baby films and just those of us who are involved in this festival can totally attest to the generosity of that man. I mean, none of us would be here right now, and there wouldn't be all of these people watching us right now if he hadn't made that decision at some point against the better judgment of his accountants and lawyers to let us do this. And I really liked what you said about looking at different adaptations of the films because, having come from a theater background, that we're just used to that in theater, right? There are hundreds of different kinds of productions of a Shakespeare play that you can go. You can go see Hamlet in any different country, in any different city at any different year and see a whole different version of it. And we're not really used to that with film, I think, like we do see reboots and remakes and oftentimes people complain about that. But just this opportunity where people can make simultaneous versions of the stories or have several of them over a number of years and give us an opportunity to see how these stories affect people's creative spark, right? There's something so enjoyable about that, and being able to see your version of Gray Matter has been really tremendous, for sure.
Yeah, I really appreciate that everybody watched. It's cool.
I find it really interesting that everybody that is so far speaking to us are like, I read this when I was a child. And all of these books are written for adults, and us fucked up kids really young ages are getting into Stephen King, but look what it has done as adults. So I think that's crazy, and it's a trend, obviously. I do have a couple of questions. Her name is Lisa B is my name on Twitter. She has 2 questions. Was the little boy playing with a Barlow figure at the start? Also, did they say they found Pete Straub's daughter? Was that a reference to Peter Straub?
Yeah. There's a million little references in there. Now it's everybody's with the King stuff. It's just he was him in the Marvel universe. They were onto this before everybody else. Now everybody's like, how can we tie everything together? But the Barlow figure was my buddy Charlie made that for me, so it could just be shown for a split second. And yes, I was supposed to be a throw off to, because they mentioned there being, I think in the story they mentioned there being twins or him, something like that, or a body of a kid, and I just threw in the Pete Straub thing because I love Peter Straub, like we all probably do.
Absolutely. Was there another question there?
No, just tons of love and saying how creepy and disgusting it was, but how much they actually really loved that. So, I mean, that's the perfect compliment, right? See? Well,
I have a question then, because in the little bio that I cribbed from your IMDb page, we mentioned that you were seen as an autopsy body in Chicago MD. Was that? Oh,
yeah. So, yeah. Basically, actually, the body that was me in Chicago Med I hope I don't get anybody in trouble for this, but it's in Gray Matter because that was what I was using as the dummy to drag around on the ground. Because it's basically, long story short, is that some of the effects people who are helping on this were working on Chicago Med and a few other really awesome things. There's a really awesome effects studio in Chicago that some of these people associated with this were working with them, and so anyway, they were looking for a corpse, and they in my picture, and they're that's perfect, which is probably says that I probably look really tired or dead. I don't know, but so they just used me as this autopsy corpse that they're making jokes over when they're cutting me up. So it's like body bags or something. So anyway, I had this copy of myself in the studio when I was filming pickup shots for this, and it was in a body bag, and it was Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of. It was started to freak me out at night when I'd be working. This copy of myself was in the corpse was in this body bag in the studio when I was doing music stuff, and anyway, it was freaking me out. But so the body that's getting dragged around, that's Henry's duplicate body. That's me. That's actually me with a wig on. or my dummy.
Awesome.
Anyway.
And so I'm sure a lot of the people who are watching right now want to know, like, what are you working on now? Like, this was a few years ago that you made this, and obviously you've been doing other things since. So what's going on in your life?
Well, yeah, I'm obsessed with making movies and stuff. I actually, just really putting my stuff out there more, I think, because a lot of the stuff I've just been making tons of things, and we're just doing it, and it's just like a one-off thing or stuff like that. But right now I'm actually working on a couple kids shows that have gotten produced. I know that, but that's how this community is. It's like they always are like all these horror guys, Tobe Hooper, George Romero, Stephen King, they're all like teddy bears, and I don't know if I'm like like that, but I love kid show stuff and I love horror stuff. So anyway, we're doing like a puppet kid show type thing that's kind of like a Fraggle Rock type thing, and then another educational kid show thing. And so I've been working on that, and then I'm obviously working on horror stuff also. So, I plan to do another practical effects crazy horror movie thing. Just have to get the money together. I'd love to do something really, really crazy monster movie style. And so I have a few things that I've been developing. So children's shows and horror movies. But like I said, I don't promote myself heavily, but I have begun posting a lot more stuff on Instagram. So if you go to Red Clark Films on Instagram or Red Clark Films on YouTube or whatever, I'm going to start posting tons of stuff. And I have like a backlog because I worked with Larry Cohen on something. I've worked on all this weird random crap. And I've got this huge backlog of weird horror stuff from going back to my childhood. So it's like American Movie, I don't know if you dig that, but I'm like that obsessed. So anyway, that's what I'm doing right now. Horror movies, kid show stuff, and as many adventures as I can during the pandemic.
Fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. And we'll tweet out some links to your channels for sure, just so that people can
that's awesome.
Can check out what you've been doing. I totally get it. I appreciate the Fraggle Rock shout out too, being Canadians. And, that was a big show growing up for us. So I totally get where you're going there. And in fact, the last film that we just made was a Christmas movie.
I have a Canadian back here.
Oh, do you really?
Oh, yes, you do.
Right.
Yes. Our Bill Shatner. We actually got to meet him here in Prince George a few years back, thanks to Northern Fan Con, and he was a lot nicer than I would have expected. Just from the things I think
he was drunk when I met him. But he was still really
awesome.
Yeah.
That's so great. Well, just before we go, because we do have the Boogeyman to get onto, if I remember correctly in our schedule.
That would be right, but we still got a minute or two.
We do have a couple of minutes
with
you. I just wanted to know if you had one other Stephen King project to work on, say that somebody did hand you the budget to do it and you had enough money to do it the way that you wanted to, what story would you want to adapt?
Oh, geez. Well, honestly, maybe, I don't know, The Long Walk, probably. I love that.
That's a good one.
So I think that would be it. But there's a lot of stuff. Really, there's things of his that, there's so much happening right now and so much coming out. It just feels like it's like everything is happening. So I'm more looking forward to watching stuff. But I'm a Maximum Overdrive fan, so it's like I'm a fan of all the Stephen King stuff. So when we saw those kids the little leaguers get run over by the steamroller as little kids, and when we were in junior high, we flipped out. We were like, they killed the kid. We couldn't believe it.
That never happens.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a fan. I would anything if someone told me I could make another Stephen King movie, and they gave me money for it, I'd make any Stephen King thing that there was, honestly. But I'm a fan, so I'll be watching whoever's making it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the other movies, and this Boogeyman one I'm excited about. So.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and also for playing along and watching along with people and interacting with the folks watching. I know that means a lot to them, and it really means a lot to us.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much to Red Clark, and we'll tweet out some information so you can see more of Red's stuff later on today. And I think Leah's just going to introduce our next film.